I started my public life 12 years ago, I understood the media might be interested in what I did, but I was not aware of how overwhelming that attention would become.
Princess Diana was the Queen of Hearts, a global icon of compassion whose image seemed utterly untouchable. She was a fiercely protective mother who tore up the royal rulebook, and a global humanitarian who championed the forgotten. But on August 31st, 1997, that image was shattered against the 13th pillar of a Paris tunnel.
The Diana, Princess of Wales, has been killed in a car accident. They were apparently being pursued by paparazzi on 2 motorcycles.
The official story blamed a drunk driver for the twisted wreckage. But her final whispered words, witnessed by the first doctor on the scene, reveal a far more devastating truth. One the royal family desperately tried to bury beneath a wall of silence and protocol. This is the untold story of those final hours. A story of why she was left so tragically unprotected, and the catastrophic failure that ultimately cost her life. The People's Princess versus the Palace. On July 29, 1981, before a global television audience of 750 million, the shy, 20-year-old former kindergarten aide stepped out of a glass carriage and into St. Paul's Cathedral. She was draped in a fairy tale gown with a 25-foot train, a blushing teenager marrying the future King of England. To the world, this was the ultimate fantasy made real. But in reality, it was the forging of a flawless public persona, a mask she would be forced to wear for the rest of her life. The monarchy had found its star, a beautiful, demure face to reinvigorate its brand. In return, Diana believed she had found the love and security she had always craved. The institution promised to protect her. It was a promise that would be catastrophically broken. From the very beginning, the immense pressure and suffocating isolation took their toll. She was a young woman thrust into an ancient, rigid institution with little guidance, expected to navigate a labyrinth of unwritten rules while being the most photographed woman on Earth. The first cracks in the facade appeared not in anger, but in compassion. The royal family operated on a stiff, unwritten code of conduct: never complain, never explain, and certainly never touch. Diana shattered that code. In 1987, at the height of public fear and prejudice, she visited a London hospital and was photographed shaking the hand of a man with AIDS without wearing gloves. It was a simple gesture that sent a shockwave across the globe. She did the same with leprosy patients, embracing them in a way that challenged the stigma surrounding the disease. Where the monarchy saw a threat to protocol, Diana saw a platform for humanity. She was building her own brand, not as a distant royal, but as the People's Princess. She took her young sons, William and Harry, on private visits to homeless shelters and insisted they wait in line at theme parks. She was crafting an identity outside the palace walls, one that was authentic, modern, and deeply connected to the public. In doing so, she was becoming more popular than the monarchy itself, a crime for which she would never be forgiven. The private war became a public spectacle. The fairy tale had curdled into a loveless 3-person marriage, a truth she could no longer hide. Prince Charles's lifelong affair with Camilla Parker Bowles was an open secret in aristocratic circles, but Diana's raw pain made it a global headline. This wasn't just a private heartbreak. It was a public humiliation that fueled her rebellion. She began using the media to her own advantage, collaborating secretly with author Andrew Morton on the explosive 1992 biography, Diana, Her True Story. The book detailed her profound unhappiness and feelings of betrayal, painting a picture of a cold, unfeeling royal establishment. The palace was furious, but the public was captivated. They saw a woman fighting back. In 1995, she sat down for that secret bombshell interview with the BBC's Panorama program. It was an unprecedented act of rebellion. Looking directly into the camera, she exposed the heartbreak and betrayal of her royal life, famously stating, "Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." She spoke of her depression, her eating disorders, and the crushing isolation of her role. With that one interview, she set fire to the royal rulebook. The divorce was finalized in 1996, She had won her freedom, but the palace exacted a steep price. They allowed her to keep her apartment at Kensington Palace and the title Princess of Wales, but they stripped her of Her Royal Highness. It sounded like a minor formality, but it was a devastating blow. The HRH title came with state-funded professional security from Scotland Yard's Elite Protection Unit. Without it, she was on her own, forced to rely on private security, which lacked the intelligence, training, and authority of the royal detail. A young Prince William reportedly told his mother, "Don't worry, Mummy, I will give it back to you one day when I am king." By the summer of 1997, Diana was more famous and beloved than ever. But she was also, for the first time, completely unprotected. That freedom had come at a terrifying price. The most hunted woman on the planet. On top of the world, Diana had never been more powerful or more pursued. In the summer of 1997, she was at the absolute apex of her power. She had transformed from a broken-hearted princess into a formidable global humanitarian. Her campaign to ban landmines saw her walking through active minefields in Angola, commanding the world's attention and infuriating British officials who saw her as a loose cannon. She was a new kind of power broker, a queen without a kingdom, whose influence and popularity eclipsed that of the entire royal family. To the public, she was a flawless icon of strength and independence, a woman who had escaped the palace and was now, finally, in complete control of her own destiny. But behind the velvet curtain of her public life, a devastating private crisis was escalating into a lethal threat. The secret was the terrifying reality of her day-to-day existence. She was the most hunted woman on the planet. Her summer romance with film producer Dodi Fayed had unleashed a media frenzy of unprecedented scale. Dodi was the son of Mohammed Al Fayed, the controversial billionaire owner of Harrods department store. For the tabloids, the story was irresistible. The mother of the future King of England involved with a wealthy Egyptian Muslim. A single blurry photograph of them kissing sold for over $1 million, fueling a relentless, suffocating pursuit. This was not journalism, it was a blood sport. Packs of photographers, known as the paparazzi, pursued her on high-speed motorcycles, their cars blocking her path, their long lenses violating every private moment. They would shout taunts to provoke a reaction, a tearful glance that could earn them a fortune. She confessed to friends that she felt cornered and terrified, that the constant hounding was becoming unbearable. The woman who looked so powerful on the world stage was, in private, a prisoner of her own fame, trapped in a high-stakes chase she knew she couldn't win. That chase reached its tragic conclusion on the night of August 30th, 1997. Diana and Dodi arrived at the Ritz Hotel in Paris for a private dinner, but the hotel was already under siege. A mob of over 30 paparazzi had laid in wait, their camera flashes turning the night into a chaotic strobe effect. After attempting to dine in the main restaurant, the couple was forced to retreat to the privacy of the imperial suite. Frustrated and desperate to escape, Dodi's father, the hotel's owner, approved a last-minute amateurish plan. A decoy car would leave from the front of the hotel to distract the press, while Diana and Dodi would sneak out the back. This decision would prove fatal. The man chosen to drive them was not a trained security professional or an expert chauffeur. He was Henry Paul, the hotel's acting head of security, who had been called back to work from his night off and was seen on camera taunting the paparazzi just minutes before the departure. Just after midnight, Paul got behind the wheel of a black Mercedes S280 with Diana, Dodi, and bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones inside. The moment they pulled away from the rear of the hotel, the trap was sprung. The paparazzi, realizing they had been tricked, were on them in seconds. Paul accelerated violently, hurtling into the streets of Paris at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, nearly twice the legal limit. In the back seat, unbelted, Diana and Dodi were thrown about as Paul swerved to evade the pursuing motorcycles. A few minutes later, the Mercedes entered the Pont de l'Alma underpass. Paul lost control. The car clipped another vehicle, slammed into the tunnel's 13th concrete pillar, and spun around, crumpling into a mangled wreck. The shocking, catastrophic truth was later laid bare by forensic reports. Henry Paul's blood alcohol level was more than 3 times the legal limit in France. His system also contained a cocktail of prescription drugs, including antidepressants and a medication used to treat alcoholism, which would have dangerously impaired his judgment. The world's most famous woman had been placed in the hands of a drunk driver in a desperate failed attempt to escape the cameras. Her life had ended in a toxic mix of media obsession and catastrophic negligence. A palace in silence, a nation in tears. The crash silenced the paparazzi's cameras, but it unleashed a global storm of grief that would shake the monarchy to its core. In the smoking, echoing tunnel, the first person to provide medical aid was a passing French doctor named Frédéric Mailles. He saw Diana alive, conscious but confused, slumped in the back of the wreckage. He held her hand and tried to comfort her, noting she was agitated and repeating the same phrase over and over. Her final heartbreaking words were not a secret message or a grand revelation, but a simple, human cry of shock. My God, what has happened? She had no idea how catastrophic the crash had been. Those words revealed the tragic truth. In her last conscious moments, she was just like anyone else, a victim, terrified and bewildered. In a horrifying indictment of the media's role, some of the paparazzi who had been chasing her arrived on the scene before emergency services, continuing to snap photos of the dying princess in the wreckage rather than offering aid. While the world reeled from the news, the royal family's reaction was one of shocking, cold silence. Following Diana's death, the Queen remained secluded at her Balmoral estate in Scotland, adhering to a rigid, ancient protocol. The palace's stated priority was to shield the young princes, William and Harry, from the public trauma. But to a grieving world, their actions seemed callous. No flag was flown at half-mast over Buckingham Palace, a symbol the public interpreted as a profound sign of disrespect. This institutional coldness was starkly contrasted by the unprecedented, raw, and overwhelming outpouring of public grief. A sea of flowers, estimated at over 60 million bouquets, began to pile up outside the gates of Kensington and Buckingham Palaces. The British public, usually known for its stiff upper lip, was openly weeping in the streets. They had lost their princess, and the monarchy's silence felt like a deep and personal betrayal. The secret the palace had tried to hide for years, their profound disconnect from the modern world Diana had championed, was now laid bare for all to see. The public's grief quickly curdled into anger. Tabloid headlines, which just days earlier had been hounding Diana, now turned on the royal family with equal ferocity, demanding, "Show us you care." The monarchy was facing its greatest crisis in a century. It was the newly elected Prime Minister, Tony Blair, who had perfectly captured the public mood, calling Diana the people's princess just hours after her death. He reportedly advised the Queen on how to navigate the crisis, acting as a bridge between the ancient institution and the modern, grieving nation. Finally, forced by the sheer weight of public outrage, the Queen bent. In a stunning break from tradition, she returned to London and delivered a live, televised address to the nation. It was a moment of forced reckoning, a monarch compelled to speak to her people, not as a queen, but as a grandmother, acknowledging Diana's legacy and the public's pain. The official investigations that followed, first in France and later in Britain, with the exhaustive Operation Paget, would spend years and millions of pounds to arrive at a conclusion. Operation Paget was launched specifically to investigate the numerous conspiracy theories pushed by Mohammed al-Fayed, including the claim that the crash was an assassination orchestrated by the British establishment. The final report, running nearly 900 pages, systematically debunked these theories. But it confirmed the core, devastating truth. Princess Diana's death was an unlawful killing, caused by the grossly negligent driving of Henri Paul and the reckless high-speed pursuit of the paparazzi who chased her to her death. The immortal princess. We began with a fairy tale princess and ended in a tunnel of twisted metal. The journey of Diana, Princess of Wales, saw her transform from a shy bride into a global icon, only to be hunted down in the City of Love. The shocking truth the palace tried to hide behind a wall of silent protocol was not a complex conspiracy, but a simple, brutal reality. The institution she fled ultimately failed to protect her, and their cold reaction to her death exposed a monarchy that was dangerously out of touch. Her death was a tragedy born from the collision of celebrity, media, and monarchy. This leads to the question that haunts her legacy today. Was Diana's death a tragic random accident fueled by an obsessive media? Or was it the inevitable and catastrophic failure of an ancient institution to protect the modern, independent woman who dared to escape it? There is no easy answer. The monarchy was forced to modernize, the media was forced to reckon with its power, and the shy girl who wanted to be queen was gone. But the people's princess in death became immortal. If you found this story compelling, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next one.